The midday sun over Brookside shone hard and unforgiving, making the cracked pavement shimmer like silver. The city was alive with the hum of traffic, the chatter of pedestrians, and the constant beep of horns that blended into the rhythm of everyday life. In the midst of this chaos, Darnell Carter moved with purpose. Darnell was a 32-year-old black man with a calm, observant nature. He worked as an IT technician for the county school district, a job he had earned after years of grinding through college, part-time shifts, and long nights fixing other people's broken laptops. His life wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. And in Brookside, stability was a gift. He wasn't flashy, didn't dress in designer brands, and wasn't the kind to boast about what he had. But today he had reason to feel proud. After years of saving and stretching every dollar, he had finally bought himself a car, a sleek, metallic gray sedan. It wasn't brand new, but to Darnell, it gleamed like a trophy. And today, as he parked outside a corner cafe on Madison Street, he was still getting used to the feeling of ownership. Darnell stepped out of the car, locked it, and walked into the cafe for a quick sandwich and iced coffee. The place smelled of roasted beans and buttered bagels, filled with the usual lunchtime crowd. He grabbed his order to go, wanting to get back on the road quickly. When he stepped outside, that's when it happened. Two men stood by his car. One of them, a tall man in a crisp polo shirt, leaned casually against the hood, tapping on his phone as though it were his property. The other, slightly shorter with sunglasses pushed up on his head, bent down to inspect the tires like he was checking the vehicle for flaws. Darnell froze for a moment, the paper bag in his hand crinkling. His first thought was innocent enough. Maybe they were just looking. But then the taller man reached for the door handle. "Excuse me," Darnell called out, his voice firm but calm. "That's my car." The man looked up slowly, eyebrows raised, lips curling into something between a smirk and a sneer. "Your car?" he said, glancing at his friend. "I don't think so." Darnell walked forward, heart thudding, but he refused to let the fear show. "Yes, my car," he said clearly, holding up his keys as proof. "I just bought it. Could you step away, please?" The shorter man chuckled. "Funny. Because this looks a whole lot like someone else's ride. You sure you didn't borrow it?" The words carried weight. In Brookside, that accusation, the suggestion that a black man in a decent car must have stolen it, wasn't new. Darnell felt the sting immediately. "I don't borrow cars," Darnell replied evenly. "I paid for it with my own money. So I'd appreciate it if you'd both back off." The taller man pushed himself off the hood, dusted his hands on his pants and took a step closer. His smirk widened. "Relax, we're just looking. Don't get so defensive." "Looking is one thing," Darnell countered. "Trying the handle is another." People on the sidewalk were beginning to notice. A woman slowed her pace, glancing over at the exchange. A man walking his dog stopped and pretended to adjust the leash, his eyes fixed on the scene. Darnell felt the weight of their attention, the invisible line of tension drawing tighter. Before Darnell could say anything more, a voice cut through the crowd. "What seems to be the problem here?" A uniformed parking enforcement officer was approaching. His badge read Officer Reynolds, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a sharp, assessing gaze. The two strangers stepped back slightly but not far enough. "This man claims this car is his," the taller one said quickly, pointing at Darnell. "But I think there's been a mistake." Darnell turned toward Reynolds, forcing his voice to stay calm. "Officer, this is my vehicle. I just bought it last week. I have the paperwork in the glove box if you want to see." Reynolds narrowed his eyes, looking from Darnell to the other men. "And you too? Who are you?" "Concerned citizens," the shorter one said smoothly. "We recognized the car. Thought it might be stolen." Reynolds pursed his lips. "All right. Sir," he said to Darnell, "can you produce some documentation?" Darnell unlocked the car and reached into the glove box, pulling out the registration and bill of sale. He handed them to Reynolds, who inspected them carefully. Meanwhile, the taller man muttered something to his friend, loud enough for Darnell to catch fragments. "Looks too good for him. Must be a mix-up." Heat surged in Darnell's chest, but he held it back. He knew how quickly these situations could spiral if he lost his composure. Reynolds glanced back at him. "Everything checks out here. This car is registered to Mr. Carter." Darnell exhaled slowly, relieved. But then Reynolds turned toward the two men. "Why exactly did you think this wasn't his?" The shorter one hesitated, then shrugged. "Just thought we recognized it. Mistake, I guess." Yet their eyes told another story. They weren't embarrassed. They weren't sorry. They were irritated that their accusation hadn't stuck. Just as Reynolds was about to dismiss the matter, another voice cut in. Hold it right there. A black SUV had pulled up alongside the sidewalk. Out stepped a tall man in a dark tailored suit, his presence commanding immediate attention. His face was stern, his silver hair neatly combed and his stride deliberate. The crowd seemed to shift as if recognizing him. It was Judge William Harrington, one of the most respected and feared figures in Brookside's courthouse. The judge's eyes scanned the scene, then landed on the car. His expression hardened. "That vehicle," he said, pointing directly at Darnell's sedan. "That's mine." The crowd gasped. Even Reynolds straightened, caught off guard. Darnell's mouth went dry. "Sir, with all due respect, this is my car. I have the paperwork right here." "I don't care what paperwork you have," Harrington snapped. "That car was stolen from me 2 weeks ago. And I want answers." The two men who had been leaning on the car earlier exchanged satisfied glances. The tension that had been simmering now ignited into full flame. The officer looked trapped, torn between the documents in his hand and the word of a sitting judge. Darnell felt the ground tilt beneath him. In the span of minutes, his pride and joy had become the center of a storm he couldn't have imagined. And as Harrington stepped closer, his voice low but filled with authority, he delivered the words that froze Darnell's blood. "Son, you are in very serious trouble." The murmurs of the crowd grew louder. The strangers smirked. Officer Reynolds hesitated. And Darnell stood beside his car, his world spinning out of control. How could this be happening? How could his hard-earned car, with his name on the papers, now be claimed by one of the most powerful men in the city? The answer wouldn't come easily. And the storm was only beginning. The silence after Judge Harrington's words felt like the eye of a storm. For a brief, suspended moment, everyone on the sidewalk froze. The officer, the crowd, the two smug men, and Darnell himself. Then, as if a switch flipped, the chatter rose again, whispers bouncing from mouth to mouth. "That's the judge. He says it's his car. Oh, this brother's in trouble now." Darnell swallowed hard, his pulse thundering in his ears. He glanced at Officer Reynolds, who still held the documents proving ownership. Reynolds looked down at the paperwork again, his brow furrowing, then back at Harrington. The struggle on his face was visible. The choice between hard evidence and the word of a man who could alter his career with a single complaint. "Judge Harrington," Reynolds began carefully, "I have documentation right here that shows this vehicle is registered to Mr. Darnell Carter." The judge's icy gaze snapped to him. "Documentation can be forged. Or perhaps the dealership made an error. Either way, that car belongs to me. It was stolen from my residence 2 weeks ago, and I filed a police report at the time. Are you telling me you're prepared to contradict me?" The crowd sucked in a collective breath. Reynolds' Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "I'm not contradicting you, sir. I'm just stating the facts in front of me." The judge's jaw tightened. "Facts can be twisted. My word, officer, is not speculation. It is sworn truth. That vehicle is mine." Darnell felt his throat tighten. "With respect, Your Honor, that's impossible. I bought this car fair and square. I have the bill of sale, the title, everything. You can check it." Harrington's eyes drilled into him, sharp and unrelenting. "Young man, I don't know where you got those papers, but I assure you, you're in possession of stolen property. The question is whether you're the thief or merely a buyer of ill-gotten goods." The two men who had been leaning on the car earlier snickered under their breath. To them this was victory. Darnell could see it in their smirks. They wanted this. They had wanted him cornered from the start. The officer shifted uncomfortably, clearly caught in a bind. "Judge, perhaps we should verify the police report against the VIN number," Reynolds suggested timidly. "That might clear this up." "Do it," Harrington ordered sharply. "Run it now." Reynolds nodded stiffly and moved toward his patrol car, documents in hand. As the officer walked away, the murmurs in the crowd grew harsher. Darnell could hear snatches of judgment, doubt, and disdain. Probably stole it. Always a scam with these types. Or bought it cheap from the wrong people. The sting of their words cut deep, not because he hadn't heard such things before, but because he had worked so hard to rise above them. His car wasn't just a vehicle. It was proof of his perseverance, his discipline, his dignity. And now, in broad daylight, it was being ripped away from him. He turned to the judge. "Sir, I'm telling the truth. I don't know why you think this is your car, but it's mine. I worked for it. I saved for years. I don't deserve this." Harrington tilted his head slightly, regarding him like a schoolteacher humoring a child. "Life, Mr. Carter, doesn't always give us what we think we deserve. The law decides what belongs to whom. And I assure you the law is on my side." The words weren't just cold, They carried an unspoken threat, a reminder of the power imbalance. Reynolds returned a few minutes later, his expression tight. He held a notepad in his hand. The VIN number does show a vehicle reported stolen 2 weeks ago, registered to Judge William Harrington. Gasps rippled through the crowd. But, Reynolds added quickly, this same VIN also appears on the paperwork Mr. Carter provided, showing a recent sale and registration in his name. What? Darnell blurted. How can the same number belong to 2 different owners? Reynolds hesitated. That's what we'll have to figure out. But technically both records exist. The judge crossed his arms, his eyes blazing. Which means, officer, that one of those records is fraudulent. And I have every reason to believe this man is the beneficiary of that fraud. Darnell stepped forward, his voice rising despite his best efforts to stay composed. No, I'm not a fraud. I went to the dealership. I signed every paper. I paid every dime. If someone sold me a car that wasn't theirs to sell, then I'm a victim here. Not a criminal. The crowd wasn't convinced. Their murmurs grew louder, feeding the tension. Harrington took a step closer, towering over Darnell, his voice low but carrying the weight of authority. Mr. Carter, you may not understand the gravity of what you've walked into. Cars are not duplicated by accident. Paperwork is not forged without intent. Someone is responsible, and unless you produce a very convincing explanation, I will ensure that responsibility falls squarely on your shoulders. Darnell's stomach knotted. He wanted to shout, to demand fairness, but he knew every word could be twisted. He looked to Reynolds, hoping for support, but the officer looked away, unable to meet his eyes. The realization hit him like a brick. The system wasn't leaning in his favor. Suddenly, a woman's voice broke through. Wait, I saw something. The crowd parted slightly and a woman stepped forward. She was in her late 20s with sandy blonde hair and nervous blue eyes. She held a phone tightly in her hand, her fingers trembling. I was outside the courthouse last week, she said. I saw a car just like this one parked by the entrance. I even took a picture because I thought it was odd how long it was sitting there. I can pull it up. The judge's eyes flickered, sharp and calculating. And who are you exactly? Just someone who pays attention, she said, her voice wavering but steady enough. If I show the picture and it matches this car, maybe it proves Mr. Carter isn't lying. The crowd leaned in, murmuring with curiosity. Darnell felt a flicker of hope for the first time since the nightmare began. Show us, he urged, his voice tight with desperation. The woman fumbled with her phone, scrolling quickly. The seconds felt like hours. The tension was unbearable, all eyes locked on the glowing screen. Finally she froze. Her eyes widened. There it is, she whispered. She turned the phone for all to see. The photo was clear. The same make, same model, same metallic gray gleam. The license plate, though blurry, looked eerily familiar. The crowd gasped again. But before anyone could speak, Judge Harrington's voice thundered. That proves nothing, he snapped. Anyone could have parked it there. The circus has gone on long enough. Officer, impound the car until the matter is resolved. Reynolds hesitated. Sir, I'm not sure that's. I said impound it. Harrington barked, his authority slamming down like a gavel. Darnell's chest tightened as panic clawed at him. His car, his hard-earned dream, was about to be taken, swallowed by the system before he even had a chance to fight back. And just as Reynolds reached for his radio, a sharp voice rang out from the back of the crowd. Not so fast, Judge. We need to talk about what you're hiding. Every head turned. A man with a weathered face and a camera slung around his neck pushed forward. His silver hair gleamed in the sunlight, and his brown eyes burned with determination. Darnell had never seen him before. But the way the judge's expression faltered for a split second told him everything. This man knew something. The crowd buzzed with confusion. The judge's composure cracked ever so slightly. The officer froze mid-motion. And Darnell, standing between hope and despair, realized the storm was far from over. Who was this stranger with the camera? And what did he know about Judge Harrington, and the car that had turned Darnell's life upside down? The answers would change everything. The crowd parted like water as the silver-haired man stepped forward, his camera swaying against his chest with each deliberate stride. His weathered face carried the marks of years, his brown eyes sharp, observant, unflinching. He moved with the quiet authority of someone who had spent decades watching and documenting truths others wanted buried. The moment he spoke, the street seemed to still. Judge Harrington, the man said, his voice steady, you can bark orders all you want, but you and I both know this isn't just about a car. This is about what you've been hiding. The judge stiffened, his jaw tightening. And who exactly are you? The man adjusted the strap of his camera and squared his shoulders. Name's Walter Briggs. Retired journalist. I've been covering this city since before you sat your first case. And I've got files, photos, and recordings that tie you to things you'd rather never see the light of day. Gasps rippled through the crowd again, louder this time. Phones rose higher into the air, recording every second. Harrington's face darkened, but he forced a controlled smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. Mr. Briggs, spreading conspiracy theories in front of a crowd won't save this man from the fact he's in possession of a stolen vehicle. Walter's lips curled into a knowing smirk. Stolen? Funny word choice. Because I have photographs of this exact car parked in your cousin's garage 2 weeks ago, days after you claimed it was stolen. The judge's composure cracked for a fraction of a second, just a flicker, but it was enough. The crowd erupted in gasps and murmurs. Darnell felt his heart hammer against his ribs. Was this the lifeline he needed? Could this stranger actually have proof to clear his name? Reynolds, the parking officer, shifted uneasily. Mr. Briggs, if you have evidence, maybe you should present it through official channels. Walter shook his head. Official channels? The man who controls those channels is standing right there. No, this needs to be seen by the people. Walter dug into the worn leather satchel slung across his shoulder and pulled out a tablet. His fingers tapped quickly and soon the screen lit up with a photograph. He held it high for the crowd to see. The image was clear, the same metallic gray sedan parked halfway inside a garage, the judge himself visible in the background, speaking to a tall blond man. That's you, Harrington, Walter said, voice firm. And that's your cousin Desmond. I took this photo the morning after you reported this car stolen. Care to explain how your stolen vehicle ended up here? The judge's expression curdled into fury, though he masked it with indignation. This is an outrageous invasion of privacy. Fabricated nonsense from a washed-up journalist desperate for relevance. But the crowd wasn't buying it. Phones zoomed in on the tablet screen. Voices rose. He's lying. That looks real. The judge is dirty. For the first time since this ordeal began, Darnell felt strength returning to his voice. You see, he said loudly, turning so the crowd could hear. I told you this was my car. I told you I bought it fair and square. And now we know why there are 2 sets of records. Someone powerful has been moving things around behind the scenes. The crowd cheered, some nodding, others calling out in support. But Harrington raised his hand, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Enough. This entire circus is a distraction. Officer Reynolds, impound the vehicle and arrest this man for interfering with an ongoing investigation. As for you, Mr. Briggs, we'll see how long your little hobby lasts once I file charges for harassment and defamation. Reynolds froze, caught between duty and fear. His eyes flicked to the crowd, then back to the judge, then to Darnell. His hand hovered over his radio, indecisive. Sir, do it. Harrington barked. But before Reynolds could act, Walter stepped closer, holding the tablet like a shield. If you lay a hand on him or me, this photo goes viral in seconds. I've already got backups. Friends in the press. You can bury paperwork, Judge, but you can't bury the truth. The crowd roared in approval. The judge's face flushed crimson, veins bulging at his temple. For the first time his control over the scene was slipping. Darnell's chest swelled with hope, fragile but real. Just then another figure pushed through the crowd. A woman in her early 30s, with sharp gray eyes and a steady stride, stepped forward. Her badge gleamed in the sunlight. Special Investigator Amaka James, she announced, flashing her credentials. Independent Anti-Corruption Task Force. The crowd buzzed louder, the words spreading like wildfire. Task Force, Investigator, Anti-Corruption. Harrington's lips thinned. What are you doing here? Amaka's gaze was unwavering. We've had our eyes on you for some time, Judge Harrington. Mr. Briggs' evidence only strengthens our case. And Mr. Carter, she said, turning to Darnell, you may be more central to this investigation than you realize. The judge's fists clenched. This is outrageous. I won't stand here and be accused like some common criminal. Amaka didn't flinch. Then you won't mind answering questions at our office. But until then, neither you nor anyone else is impounding this car. The crowd erupted in applause, some cheering, others chanting Darnell's name. For the first time, the balance seemed to tip in his favor. But Harrington wasn't finished. His voice dropped low, venom lacing each word. You think you can embarrass me in front of a crowd? You think this spectacle changes anything? You have no idea the forces you're playing with. I built this city's courts. I decide who rises and who falls. And if you cross me, Carter, if you cross me, Briggs, James, I will bury you so deep not even your families will remember your names. The venomous threat hung heavy in the air. Some in the crowd fell silent, fear returning to their faces. Darnell felt his stomach twist. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was about power, corruption, and a man who would scorch the earth to keep his secrets hidden. Before anyone could respond, a loud screech of tires echoed from around the corner. Heads whipped toward the sound. A black SUV came barreling down the street, swerving dangerously close to the crowd. People screamed and scattered. The vehicle skidded to a halt just feet from the sedan. The driver's door flew open. A muscular man with a diagonal scar across his cheek leapt out, his cold eyes scanning the scene. It was clear he wasn't there by accident. And the way Harrington's lips curled into a dark, satisfied smile told everyone one thing. This was about to get far more dangerous. The crowd scattered as the black SUV screeched to a halt. A hush fell as the driver stepped out, a man built like a tank, muscles taut beneath a fitted black shirt. His pale skin contrasted with the jagged scar running diagonally across his right cheek, a mark that made his presence even more menacing. His cold, predatory eyes swept the street like a hunter surveying prey. Gasps rose from those who recognized him. That's him, the scarred man. The nickname was whispered in Brookside like a cautionary tale. He was said to be a fixer, a man who made problems disappear for people with enough power to pay. His appearance here wasn't coincidence. Judge Harrington's smirk deepened. Perfect timing, the judge said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. Handle this. The scarred man's gaze locked on Darnell, then drifted to Walter Briggs, then to investigator Amaka James. He said nothing at first, just stood with arms folded, the silent weight of intimidation pressing down on the air. The shift was immediate. Where moments before the crowd had been chanting, cheering for Darnell, now fear pulled them back. People lowered their phones, stepping away from the sedan. The courage that had filled the street seeped out like water through cracks. Darnell's heart pounded, but he stood firm. He wouldn't show fear, not here, not now. This isn't your show, investigator Amaka said, her voice steady, though her hand hovered near her badge. Whatever you think you're here to do, back away. This is now under investigation. The scarred man tilted his head, finally speaking. His voice was low, gravelly, and dangerous. You're out of your league, lady. Everyone here is. He stepped closer, the scar catching the light, his eyes narrowing on Darnell. Nice car you've got. Shame it's going to be towed. Or worse. Walter Briggs shifted his weight and raised his camera. I've got you on film. Every move you make. So if you think you're going to strong-arm your way through this, remember, the world's watching. The scarred man's lip curled into a half-smile. Then maybe the world needs to see what happens to meddlers. He lunged forward, snatching at the camera. Briggs stumbled back, clutching it tight. Gasps erupted as the two men struggled briefly, the camera swinging between them. Enough. Amaka barked, stepping between them, hand raised. Back off or I'll have you charged with assault right here, right now. The scarred man paused, his breathing heavy, his jaw tense. For a moment it seemed he might strike anyway. Then, slowly he released Briggs' arm, letting the camera drop back against his chest. He leaned in close, whispering just loud enough for the nearest bystanders to hear. Careful, old man. Photographers go missing all the time. Briggs' face tightened, but his grip on the camera never wavered. Judge Harrington stepped forward, his voice ringing with faux authority. This circus is over. Officer Reynolds, impound the vehicle immediately. Scarred man, make sure no one interferes. As for you, Investigator James, overstepping your jurisdiction will not be tolerated. You answer to the courts and I am the court. Amaka's jaw clenched. You may be a judge, but you're not the law. Not above it and not immune from it. The people see what's happening here. She gestured toward the crowd, but her words rang hollow now. Many had drifted to the edges of the sidewalk, avoiding eye contact, unwilling to challenge the fear that had descended with the scarred man's arrival. Harrington smiled coldly. The people forget quickly. They always do. The pressure built like a vice around Darnell. His dream, his car, now sat between two powers, the corrupted authority of Harrington and the brute intimidation of the scarred man. His body shook with adrenaline, but he forced himself to speak. You can threaten me, you can twist the truth, but I'm not giving in. This car is mine. And no matter what you do, I'm not backing down. The crowd murmured again, some emboldened by his words. A few phones rose back into the air, recording. The pendulum of courage swung cautiously back. Harrington sneered. Bold words from a man seconds away from losing everything. Walter Briggs raised his tablet again. You think you can bury this, Harrington? I've got more than photos. I've got recordings, conversations, deals, payoffs. You and your cousin Desmond Cole aren't as untouchable as you think. The judge's eyes flashed, a shadow of panic breaking through his mask. Careful, Briggs. Lies are dangerous. They're not lies, Briggs shot back. And I'm not the only one who has them. You silence me, others will come forward. Darnell's mind raced. Pieces were clicking together. The stolen car, the dual records, the judge's fury, the scarred man's arrival. This wasn't just about him. He had stumbled into a war bigger than anything he had imagined. A mawkish voice cut through the chaos. Officer Reynolds, listen carefully. If you impound that car without cause, you'll be complicit in obstruction. This is no longer a simple property dispute. This is corruption at the highest level. You swore an oath, act like it. Reynolds' face was pale, sweat dotting his forehead. He looked at Harrington, then at Amaka, then at the crowd with their phones recording. He was cornered. Finally he lowered his radio. I can't impound the car. Not like this. Not with this much in question. A ripple of relief surged through Darnell. But it lasted only a moment. Because the scarred man stepped forward again, cracking his knuckles. Then maybe, he growled, I'll take care of it myself. The scarred man gripped the car door handle and yanked hard. The lock popped open, startling Darnell. Gasps filled the air as he slid into the driver's seat of the sedan, his massive frame looming behind the wheel. Darnell lunged forward. Get out of my car. The scarred man smirked, starting the ignition with a flick of his wrist. The engine roared to life. Briggs raised his camera. Amaka reached for her phone. The crowd surged forward, shouting in protest. And Judge Harrington's voice rang out above it all, smooth and venomous. Watch closely, Mr. Carter. You're about to see what happens when you challenge power. The sedan lurched forward, tires screeching, the scarred man behind the wheel. And Darnell, his dream, his pride, his proof of hard work, was being driven away before his very eyes. The roar of the engine swallowed the street. Tires screeched, smoke curled, and in seconds the scarred man had the sedan tearing forward down Brookside Avenue. The crowd scattered like leaves in a storm, some screaming, others raising phones to capture the brazen theft. Stop him. Darnell shouted, sprinting after the car. His lungs burned, his legs pumped, but the sedan's power was no match for his stride. Within moments, it vanished into the chaos of traffic, swallowed by the city. Darnell staggered to a halt, chest heaving, sweat pouring down his face. His fists clenched, his jaw tight. He had worked years to own that car, sacrificed sleep and meals and moments of peace. And now, in broad daylight, in front of witnesses and cameras, it had been stolen, not by a street criminal, but by the enforcer of a corrupt judge. Behind him, Judge Harrington raised his hands, his voice commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed the actions of a desperate thief trying to evade justice. This man, he pointed directly at Darnell, is not the victim here. He is the criminal. And soon the law will catch up with him. Boos and murmurs rippled through the crowd, but some eyes flickered with doubt. Harrington was seasoned in the art of performance, his words smooth, polished, rehearsed. He twisted the truth with ease, planting seeds of suspicion even as the truth stared people in the face. Don't listen to him. Walter Briggs shouted, holding up his camera. I've got it all recorded, the scarred man, his threats, his theft. The world will see the truth. The judge sneered. A washed-up reporter with doctored photos and tall tales. You think the courts will take you seriously? You think the people will risk their safety siding with you? You'll be forgotten by morning. Darnell spun toward him, fury blazing in his chest. I'll never be forgotten. Not after today. Not after what you just did. Amaka James stepped between them, her presence steady, her voice sharp. Judge Harrington, you've crossed a line. Theft, intimidation, obstruction. This isn't going away. Not this time. She turned to Darnell and Briggs. We need to move fast. If the scarred man drives that car into a private location, we may lose it, and the evidence inside, for good. Darnell's head snapped up. Evidence? Amaka nodded. Think about it. Why would Harrington risk so much over one car? Because there's something inside it, something tying him and Desmond Cole to their crimes. The car isn't just a vehicle anymore. It's a vault. The realization hit Darnell like a punch. His car, his pride, had been turned into the centerpiece of a conspiracy. And now it was in enemy hands. Briggs lifted his tablet again, tapping furiously. I might have something. I installed a GPS tracker in my camera bag, and when Scarred Man grabbed at me, I clipped one of the tags onto the car door without him noticing. Darnell blinked. You did what? Briggs smirked despite the tension. Old journalist trick. Always be 2 steps ahead. He turned the screen toward them. A blinking red dot moved steadily across the city map. There, Briggs said. They're heading north toward the industrial district. Amaka's eyes narrowed. That's coal territory. Desmond Cole owns warehouses up there, shell companies, fronts for laundering money. If they take the car there, it may never come out again. The 3 of them bolted toward Amaka's unmarked sedan. She slid behind the wheel, Briggs in the back with his tablet, and Darnell riding shotgun, his pulse thrumming in his ears. Hang on, Amaka warned, slamming the accelerator. The car surged forward, weaving through traffic, chasing the blinking dot on the screen. Darnell gripped the dashboard, his mind a storm. He thought of the long nights delivering packages, saving dollar after dollar, the look on his mother's face when he showed her the car. And now, all of it teetered on the edge of being erased. Not just the car but his name, his dignity, his future. I'm not letting them win, he muttered. Amaka glanced at him, her expression unreadable but resolute. Then we don't stop until we get it back. Meanwhile, the Scarred Man guided the sedan into a cavernous warehouse, its walls lined with crates and dimly lit by flickering bulbs. Desmond Cole stood waiting, tall and athletic, his piercing blue eyes gleaming with arrogance. Well done, Desmond said, clapping slowly as the Scarred Man killed the engine. My dear cousin Harrington will be pleased. The Scarred Man stepped out, his scar catching the weak light. We've got company. The journalist. The woman from the task force. And that Carter kid. Desmond smirked. Good. Let them come. By the time they get here, the evidence will be ash. He nodded to a pair of henchmen who emerged from the shadows, their merciless stares fixed on the car. They moved to pry open the trunk. Inside, nestled beneath a false panel, sat a locked briefcase. Back on the road, Briggs pointed at the blinking dot. They've stopped. Industrial district just like you said. Warehouse 47. Amaka swerved off the freeway, tires screeching as she veered down a service road. We don't have much time. Darnell's fists clenched. If they destroy what's in that car. Then Harrington walks free, Amaka finished grimly. Briggs leaned forward. Then we don't let them destroy it. They arrived just as the warehouse doors were grinding shut. Amaka killed the engine and the 3 scrambled out, ducking behind crates as they approached. From inside, muffled voices echoed. Desmond Cole's smooth baritone carried through the metal walls. Burn it. Every file, every drive, every trace. And make sure Carter's name is buried with it. Darnell's blood ran cold. Amaka pressed a finger to her lips, signaling silence. She whispered, we need a plan. If we rush in, we'll be crushed. Briggs adjusted his camera. We don't need to fight them. We just need to catch them. Amaka's eyes flicked to him. Explain. Briggs grinned. A live feed. If I can stream this right now, their denials won't matter. Everyone will see the truth as it happens. Before they could set up, the warehouse door screeched open again. The Scarred Man stepped out, scanning the perimeter. His eyes locked on the 3 figures crouched in the shadows. There, he growled. Within seconds, the henchmen poured out, surrounding them. Darnell's pulse spiked. He glanced at Amaka, then at Briggs, who was fumbling with his tablet trying to connect the feed. Desmond Cole emerged, his polished smirk gleaming in the dim light. Carter. You really should have walked away when you had the chance. Now you're about to learn how the world works. He snapped his fingers. The henchman advanced. Briggs shouted, it's live. The world's watching right now. The henchmen hesitated, glancing at one another. Desmond's smirk faltered just for an instant. But the Scarred Man didn't pause. He stepped forward, fists tightening, his shadow looming over Darnell. You won't make it out of here, he growled. And then, from deep inside the warehouse, the sound of metal clattering echoed, followed by the unmistakable wail of approaching sirens. Harrington's furious voice boomed from within. Stop them before it's too late. Darnell's heart pounded. The fight for his car, for the truth, for his very future, had reached its breaking point. The sirens grew louder, bouncing off the steel ribs of the warehouse, cutting through the tense night air. The henchmen froze mid-stride, uncertain whether to drag Darnell, Amaka, and Briggs inside or scatter before the flashing lights arrived. Desmond Cole's smirk flickered, then hardened. Ignore the noise. Handle them. Now. The Scarred Man cracked his knuckles, stepping closer to Darnell. His scar caught the glow of the street lamps, his cold eyes promising destruction. But Briggs, clutching his tablet high like a shield, shouted above the chaos. It's live. Thousands are watching right now, every move, every word. You lay a finger on us and it's all broadcast to the world. The scarred man hesitated. His instinct for violence warred with calculation. Slowly, he turned his head toward Desmond, waiting for the order. From within the warehouse, Judge Harrington stormed out, his face red with rage, his robes flapping like a cloak of arrogance. He jabbed a finger at Darnell. This man is a thief, a criminal, a liar. Arrest him. Arrest them all. But the sirens had reached the lot. 2 police cruisers skidded to a halt outside the warehouse, lights strobing red and blue. Officers spilled out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Hands where we can see them. Nobody moves. The crowd that had followed from downtown gathered at the perimeter, phones raised, recording every second. The live stream from Briggs's tablet synced with dozens of other broadcasts. For the first time, Harrington and Cole's shadows had been dragged into the light. With the guns and cameras trained on the warehouse, Darnell felt something shift inside him. Fear gave way to fire. His voice rang out, not just to the officers, not just to the crowd, but to everyone watching across the city. My name is Darnell Carter, he declared, his chest heaving. That car, the one they stole from me, it's mine. I worked for it. I bled for it. And these men tried to take it, not because I broke the law, but because I threatened to expose theirs. He pointed at Harrington, whose face twisted with fury. That man isn't justice. He's corruption in a robe. He sent his enforcer to steal my car because inside it is proof that he and Desmond Cole are laundering money, abusing power, destroying lives. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones rose higher. The officers exchanged uncertain looks. Inside the trunk of Darnell's car, the locked briefcase waited, heavy with secrets. Amaka stepped forward, her badge gleaming under the flashing lights. Judge Harrington, Desmond Cole, you're both under investigation. And by the authority of the task force, I'm placing this scene under evidence control. Harrington bellowed, you have no jurisdiction here. But Amaka ignored him. She turned to the officers. Open the trunk. 2 officers moved cautiously, pried the trunk and pulled out the case. The crowd surged, their phones capturing every angle. Briggs zoomed in with his camera, his livestream counter climbing by the thousands. Amaka snapped the lock open. The lid creaked. Inside lay a neat stack of ledgers, hard drives and envelopes stuffed with cash. Briggs whispered, they buried people with this. Amaka lifted the ledger. Not anymore. Desmond lunged forward, his polished smirk breaking into raw panic. That's not admissible. This is entrapment. But the scarred man caught him by the arm. It's over, he muttered, his voice flat. For the first time, his cold eyes carried something close to resignation. Judge Harrington raged, spittle flying. You fools! You think you can destroy me? I am the law. Without me this city falls apart. But his words fell on deaf ears. The officers closed in, cuffing Desmond first, then Harrington. The sight of the once untouchable judge being shoved into the back of a cruiser sent a cheer rippling through the crowd. Phones captured every second. Within minutes, the story had already gone viral. The hashtags trended, hashtag hands off that car. Hashtag justice for Darnell. As the cruisers pulled away, Darnell stood frozen, his chest heaving. The scarred man lingered nearby, uncuffed, his expression unreadable. For a moment their eyes locked. Then, without a word, he melted into the shadows, vanishing into the night. Darnell didn't chase him. Not tonight. Instead, he walked slowly to his car. His hands trembled as he touched the hood, feeling the familiar warmth of the engine. For a moment it didn't feel real. Briggs clapped him on the back. Brother, you just took down a judge and a crime boss on live camera. That car's not just a car anymore. It's a symbol. Amaka smiled, weary but proud. You fought for your dignity and you won. Few people can say that. Darnell's throat tightened. I just wanted my car back. I didn't ask for all this. Amaka's gaze softened. Sometimes the fight finds us. Weeks later the headlines still blazed. Judge Harrington disbarred. Desmond Cole indicted. Task force raids on shell companies across the city. Briggs's footage was replayed on national networks, his name restored as a journalist of integrity. Amaka's task force gained new funding and support. And Darnell Carter, once just another man fighting for respect, had become a local hero. The car sat in his driveway, polished, repaired, its paint gleaming under the sun. But to Darnell it was no longer just steel and rubber. It was proof that no one, no matter how powerful, had the right to strip him of his dignity. His mother hugged him tightly on the porch, tears glistening in her eyes. You showed them who you are. You showed them who we are. Darnell smiled faintly, the weight finally lifting. They'll never forget. As the neighborhood kids ran past, pointing at the car, shouting his name, Darnell realized something deeper. This wasn't just about a vehicle. It was about the fight every black man faced, to be seen, respected, and free. And for once, victory was his. If you love this story, give us a like, subscribe, share, and tell us what you think.